The marble lobby of Westboro Crown Towers exploded with noise as a security alarm suddenly echoed through the building. "Stop him!" Two guards rushed forward across the polished floor. Residents turned around in confusion as the glass doors swung open and a tall, black man stepped inside wearing dusty construction boots and a faded work jacket. He held a clipboard in one hand and a helmet under his arm. The alarm finally stopped. The man stood calmly in the center of the lobby while dozens of wealthy residents stared at him like he had walked into the wrong world. One of the guards stepped closer. "Sir, you can't just walk in here." The man looked around the lobby quietly. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls, crystal chandeliers, Italian marble stretching across the floor, a grand piano near the sitting area. Everything about the building screamed luxury. "I'm here for a property inspection," the man said calmly. The guard frowned. "Inspection?" Before the guard could respond, a loud voice cut across the room. "What's going on here?" Andrew Collins marched out from behind the concierge desk with an irritated expression. Andrew had been the building manager of Westboro Crown Towers for 12 years. The property was one of the most expensive residential towers in Manhattan. Billionaires, celebrities, and hedge fund executives lived here. Andrew stopped a few feet away from the man and looked him up and down slowly. Dusty boots, work jacket, construction helmet. His eyes hardened instantly. "This is a private residence," Andrew said sharply. "Not a construction site." The man remained calm. "I have an inspection appointment," Andrew laughed. "You?" Several residents standing near the elevators chuckled quietly. Andrew crossed his arms. "I know every contractor that enters this building," he said, "and you're not one of them." The man glanced at his clipboard. "My name is Marcus Reed." Andrew waved his hand dismissively. "I don't care what your name is." The receptionist looked nervous. "Sir, maybe we should check the appointment list." Andrew cut her off immediately. "I already know the answer." He turned back toward Marcus. "You people always try to sneak into buildings like this pretending you belong here." The words landed heavily. A woman standing near the elevator looked uncomfortable. Marcus studied Andrew calmly. "So you want me to leave?" Andrew pointed toward the door. Immediately, Marcus nodded slowly. He turned slightly toward the exit. But before he could leave, 3 black luxury SUVs suddenly pulled up outside the building. The glass doors opened. 4 sharply dressed investors stepped inside carrying leather folders. The receptionists gasped quietly. "Oh no!" Andrew straightened his suit instantly. Those weren't ordinary visitors. They were members of the new ownership investment group that had purchased the building for nearly $600 million. Andrew rushed toward them with a wide smile. "Welcome to Westboro Crown Towers." The woman leading the group stepped forward. Her name was Eleanor Hayes, one of the most powerful real estate investors in New York. "Good morning," she said calmly. Andrew began explaining proudly. "This building is one of the most prestigious residential towers in the city. Our residents expect the highest standards." Eleanor suddenly stopped walking. Her eyes moved past Andrew and landed on Marcus. Her serious expression instantly turned into a warm smile. "Oh, perfect," she said. Andrew blinked in confusion. Eleanor walked straight past him, past the guards, past the concierge desk, until she stood directly in front of Marcus. Then she extended her hand respectfully. "Mr. Reed," she said. The lobby froze. Andrew's stomach dropped. Marcus shook her hand politely. "Good morning." Andrew stepped closer in disbelief. "Wait, what's happening?" Eleanor turned slowly toward him. Her voice became colder. "Mr. Collins, correct?" Andrew nodded nervously. "Yes." She gestured toward Marcus. "Allow me to introduce the new majority owner of Westboro Crown Towers." The lobby went completely silent. Andrew stared at Marcus like his brain had stopped working. "Owner," he whispered. Marcus nodded slightly. "My investment group finalized the purchase last week." Residents began whispering all around the lobby. Andrew felt heat rush into his face. "Ah, you're a contractor." Marcus smiled faintly. "Today I am." Andrew's mouth opened, but no words came out. Eleanor spoke clearly so everyone could hear it. "Mr. Reed personally holds 70% of the property ownership." Andrew felt his legs go weak. Every insulting word he had said minutes earlier echoed in his head. I didn't know," Andrew stammered. Marcus nodded. "That's exactly the point." The words felt heavier than any insult. Across the business world, respect and leadership culture often determine how people are treated inside organizations. Research shows that only about 37% of workers say they feel respected at work, and poor leadership behavior can damage company culture and morale. Marcus glanced around the lobby. He noticed the guards staring at the floor, residents whispering, the receptionist watching nervously. "I came here this morning dressed like a construction worker," Marcus said calmly. He looked back at Andrew. "And within 30 seconds you decided I didn't belong." Andrew couldn't respond. Marcus continued. "That tells me something about how people are treated here." Eleanor nodded slightly, which is exactly why Mr. Reed wanted to visit the building personally. Marcus stepped toward the elevator. Let's begin the inspection. The investors followed him. As the elevator doors closed, the lobby erupted into whispers. Andrew Collins stood frozen. 10 minutes earlier, he had been the most powerful person in the building. Now, the man he had nearly thrown out owned the entire tower. The elevator rose toward the penthouse levels. Glass walls revealed the Manhattan skyline stretching endlessly across the horizon. Marcus stepped into the executive lounge, where the investors gathered around a long table. Eleanor opened a digital report. Financially, the building performs very well, she explained. But there have been several complaints about management behavior. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Specifically, disrespect toward staff and contractors. Marcus looked out the window. Workplace culture often reflects leadership behavior, and studies show leadership is one of the strongest influences on company culture and employee morale. Marcus turned back to the table. An hour later, the group returned to the lobby. Andrew was waiting nervously. The moment Marcus stepped out of the elevator, Andrew walked forward. Mr. Reed, I owe you an apology. Marcus looked at him calmly. For what? Andrew swallowed. I judged you the moment I saw you. Marcus nodded. Yes, he did. The lobby went quiet again. Andrew took a deep breath. I promise that won't happen again. Marcus studied him for several seconds. Then he smiled slightly. Good. Andrew blinked in surprise. You're not firing me. Marcus shook his head. Not today. Relief flooded Andrew's face. But Marcus stepped closer and spoke quietly. However, if I ever hear about someone being treated the way you treated me this morning, he paused. You won't get another chance. Andrew nodded quickly. You won't. Marcus looked around the lobby once more. Residents, workers, security guards, the receptionist. Respect doesn't depend on someone's clothes, Marcus said calmly. It depends on your character. No one said a word. Marcus walked toward the exit. Outside, the busy streets of Manhattan roared with life. Construction workers hammered steel beams across the road. Delivery drivers rode past the tower. Marcus paused for a moment and looked back at the building, a place filled with wealth, power, and status. But after today, something inside it had changed. Because everyone who witnessed that morning would remember one powerful lesson. Sometimes the man in dusty work boots owns the entire building. Marcus Reed leaned back in the leather seat of the black SUV as it pulled away from the curb. Through the tinted window he could still see Sterling Heights Tower rising high above the busy Chicago street. The glass walls reflected the morning sun, making the building glow like a symbol of wealth and success. But Marcus wasn't thinking about the building itself. He was thinking about the moment in the lobby, about the way Andrew Collins had looked at him before he knew who he was. Eleanor Hayes sat across from him, reviewing notes on her tablet. After a few seconds she glanced up. You're quiet, she said. Marcus smiled faintly. I'm thinking about the manager, she asked. Partly, Marcus replied. The SUV merged into traffic as the city moved around them. Pedestrians rushed across crosswalks. Construction cranes towered above nearby buildings. Chicago was always in motion. Marcus watched a delivery cyclist ride past the car, balancing several packages on the back of his bike. That used to be me, Marcus said suddenly. Eleanor looked up again. Deliveries? Marcus nodded. Years ago. He leaned his head back slightly. When I first moved to the city, I didn't have much money. I took whatever work I could find. Construction sites, delivery jobs, cleaning offices at night. Eleanor listened carefully. Marcus continued. Most people never looked twice at me. He paused. But sometimes people looked at me exactly the way Andrew looked at me this morning. Eleanor nodded slowly. Judging before knowing. Marcus gave a small smile. Exactly. The car turned onto a wide avenue lined with tall buildings. Eleanor placed the tablet down. Are you really planning to keep Andrew as manager? She asked. Marcus thought for a moment. People reveal who they are when they think someone has no power, he said. That's true, Eleanor replied. But they also reveal who they are when they're given a second chance. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. You believe he can change? Marcus looked back toward the skyline where Sterling Heights Tower was slowly disappearing behind them. I believe people can learn, he said. But they have to understand the lesson first. Back inside the building, the lobby had finally begun to return to normal. Residents who had witnessed the dramatic moment were still whispering quietly to each other. Andrew Collins stood behind the reception desk, staring at the floor. His coffee sat untouched beside him. The receptionist looked at him carefully. You okay? Andrew sighed. I've managed this building for 10 years, she nodded. You're good at your job. Andrew shook his head slowly. Apparently not good enough. He replayed the conversation with Marcus in his mind again and again. The dusty boots, the construction jacket, the calm voice, and the moment Eleanor said the words, "the majority owner." Andrew rubbed his forehead. "I almost threw the owner of the building out the front door." The receptionist gave a nervous laugh. "Well, technically you tried." Andrew didn't smile. Across the lobby, one of the security guards approached. "Mr. Collins?" Andrew looked up. "Yes." The guard held out a small envelope. "A courier dropped this off a few minutes ago." Andrew frowned slightly and opened it. Inside was a short, typed note. Andrew read it silently. Then he read it again. The receptionist leaned forward. "What does it say?" Andrew handed her the paper. She read the message aloud quietly. "Respect is not about recognizing powerful people. It's about treating every person with dignity before you know who they are. Let today be the day Sterling Heights becomes the kind of building where everyone is welcomed with respect. Marcus Reed." The receptionist looked up slowly. "That's actually a really nice message." Andrew nodded quietly. "Hitch." He folded the note carefully and placed it inside his suit pocket. Across the lobby doors, a delivery driver stepped inside carrying several packages. Andrew watched him for a moment. The driver looked nervous, standing in such an expensive building. For the first time in years, Andrew walked out from behind the desk himself. "Good morning," Andrew said. The driver looked surprised. "I have deliveries for apartment 22B. Andrew smiled politely. "Of course. I'll help you get them upstairs." The receptionist watched the moment silently. Something about the building already felt slightly different. Meanwhile, across the city, Marcus's SUV had arrived at another office building. Red Property Investments occupied the top 3 floors. Marcus stepped out of the car and adjusted his jacket. Eleanor joined him. "You have meetings all afternoon?" she reminded him. Marcus nodded. They walked through the front doors and into a sleek modern lobby filled with employees working at desks and computers. A young intern carrying a stack of folders accidentally bumped into Marcus. "Oh, sorry," the intern said nervously. Marcus steadied the folders before they fell. "No problem," he replied with a friendly smile. The intern looked relieved. "Thank you, sir." Marcus continued walking toward the elevator. Eleanor noticed something and smiled. "What?" Marcus asked. "You practice what you preach," she said. Marcus shrugged slightly. "My mother had a rule." "What rule?" Marcus pressed the elevator button. "She said you should treat the janitor the same way you treat the CEO." The elevator doors opened. Marcus stepped inside. "Because one day," he added with a small grin, "they might actually be the same person." Eleanor laughed as the doors closed. And somewhere back at Sterling Heights Tower, a building manager who once judged a man by his clothes was beginning to understand something important. Respect should never depend on status, because sometimes the quiet stranger walking through the door is the one who owns the entire building.